In the tunnel. In the tunnel. In the tunnel. You're listening to In the Tunnel.
Hello and welcome to In the Tunnel, episode number 66.
Hooray! We finally figured it out. This is only our third attempt to start a show.
And no technical difficulties were had in the making of this episode.
I told you never to trust my ideas.
Alright, anyway, we're going to start off with off-season grades for the NFL, which would be both the draft and just free agent acquisition.
Correct.
And
because, we don't touch on anything to the extent that we should, so this is our one opportunity to really actually do something.
Yeah, so we'll just be going through the teams one by one in alphabetical order. And the wheel will tell you how they did. So, starting with the Cardinals.
So what they did is apparently they got an F.
Yeah, so let's explain how they got an F.
Well, they re-signed Larry Fitzgerald. They slapped the transition tag on Kenyon Drake, so they keep both those guys around. Not to mention, they signed Devondre Campbell, who's a linebacker. Got Marcus Gilbert to re-sign after he was traded from the Steelers last year. They got the big fish in DeAndre Hopkins. They got Devon Kennard on a 3-year deal to help fortify that linebacker core even more, and then signed a defensive tackle, Jordan Phillips, too.
So do you think they got an F because they went too much? They went out too much?
Maybe. It seems like a lot of their, signings were on the defensive end, which they needed. My guess is the F comes on the fact that they spent probably too much of their draft on defense too, having drafted 1, 2, 3, 4 of their 6 picks on the defensive end.
Oh, dang. That's a lot.
Yep. So there you go. That'll do it for you.
Yeah. All right. On to the Falcons. The wheel gives the Falcons a C.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what they did is they signed a linebacker who was with the Rams, Dante Fowler. They signed Todd Gurley, which no one other than people who rooted for him at Georgia really, I guess, understand why they signed a guy with arthritis in his knees.
Yeah.
They signed a tight end who got outperformed by 2 guys who weren't drafted in the first round like him in Baltimore.
Okay.
They signed acquired a defensive end from the Dolphins for a 7th round pick, so that's essentially a meaningless move.
Mm-hmm.
And they signed a defensive tackle for a 3-year, $12 million deal. Not to mention they also drafted a cornerback, defensive tackle, center, linebacker, safety, and to top it off, a punter in the 7th round. A punter that they traded the pick.
Wait.
I'm sorry. They acquired the pick for a punter from Syracuse.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know how.
Well, I have to read the pre-draft analysis on this punter from ESPN.
Okay.
Because the first half of the first sentence is gold.
Okay.
Hoff-Richter is a small punter with smaller hands.
What?
Maybe the least relevant scouting report for a punter ever. But he has above average leg strength and he's accurate. Again, any of these are characteristics you look for in a punter. He connected on 3 of his 4 career field goal attempts. Cool, but he's a punter. And he connected on a 52-yard field goal attempt in 2019.
Still a punter.
He plays for Syracuse in the Carrier Dome, which is a basketball arena that they switch out to football. So I don't really care about what he can do in a dome. He gets good distance on his kickoffs. Cool. There's only so many domes that he's going to play in outside of the home stadium, and I realize halfway through what I'm saying that he's going to play in a dome for the next part of his career.
Yeah,
so I mean, I retract part of my criticism, but ESPN must have had some big time layoffs in the scouting department.
All right, on to the Ravens.
Yes.
Will they be the first ones with a good grade?
Probably. Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, and they get an A.
And that's what they're getting in the real world, too. So.
Oh, okay.
Because they actually drafted good players.
Nice.
Really, but.
Not nice for you.
They acquired the former All-Pro Calais Campbell from the Jaguars, who were unloading their ship. They franchise tagged one of their edge rushers. They, I guess, kept a center. Re-signed a cornerback.
Okay.
Re-signed a defensive end. And re-signed a defensive lineman. So really, they didn't lose anybody. That was their big free agency stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it's good not to lose anybody.
Yeah, but then they got J.K. Dobbins, the running back out of Ohio State, who a lot of people wanted pretty late in the second round. Not to mention they had just a ton of picks.
Okay.
And they got a linebacker out of LSU, because when you think the Ravens, you don't exactly think whole at linebacker, but they added one anyway. Then they added a wide receiver, another linebacker. Actually, they drafted 2 wide receivers, and they addressed the offensive line. So nice. Really, I'm not getting into all of these because there's like 12 draft picks, but you get what I'm saying here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that an A is actually a pretty good rating for them. So you get no complaints from me.
Well, you're a Giants fan.
Yeah. On to the Bills.
So Buffalo.
They get a D.
So let's see here. Okay, so that's probably solely for signing Josh Norman. Because when the Redskins release someone whose contract isn't up, he probably, as a playoff contender, at least for the next few years to come, now in an easier AFC East, don't go after the scrubs. Let's see. They re-signed a couple offensive linemen. They got Quentin Jefferson,
okay,
who I think played for the Seahawks. Yeah, and he's from Pittsburgh. Anyway, not to focus on my city here, but yeah, they didn't do. Oh, I mean the Stephon Diggs trade. That's pretty notable. And they re-signed they signed edge rusher that I believe played for the Panthers on a 3-year, $30 million deal. So they had money to throw around, that's for sure. They also got Dane Jackson with their 7th-round pick. He's a good cornerback. But in between there, they kind of gamble on some guys. Also, I don't like Jake Fromm as a backup in Buffalo for quarterback.
Okay.
I think he's like Alex Smith, but worse.
Oh. All right. So on to the Panthers.
Also, ESPN will say that they didn't address their holes at linebacker and offensive guard.
Okay. On to the Panthers then.
Panthers. Philadelphia Freedom. Okay, yeah. Here's a grade I can agree with. An A for the Panthers. They got Robbie Anderson, a young wide receiver who was like the one bright spot on the Jets for the past 3 or 4 years. So they got him for 2 years, $20 million. That's pretty cheap.
That's pretty good.
That's for a young wide receiver who's only going to get better. The front end of that deal is loaded because he's getting $12 million the first year. They got a quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater.
Mm-hmm.
They brought Trey Boston back, although he's a safety and he's kind of getting older. Pharaoh Cooper is a good special team wideout. They got like the best quarterback at XFL. They signed a decent linebacker into here, Whitehead, for a 1-year deal.
Okay.
Fortified some wide receivers. Let's see here. And then they went out, fortified the defensive line with Gross Matos from Penn State. He was really good.
Mm-hmm.
Then Derek Brown in the first round. And then actually, I don't know if I've ever seen this before. Every one of their picks was on the defensive side.
Oh.
So they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 picks in the draft, all on the defense. D tackle, D end, safety, cornerback, safety, D tackles, cornerback. I don't know if I've ever seen that in a draft class before. But they addressed so much on offense in free agency that they kind of,
Yeah, makes sense.
Although ESPN will say that they did not address the linebacker spot, which apparently they need both inside and outside.
Oh, okay. On to the Bears.
Well, let's just start off by saying having 11 tight ends on your roster warrants an F, and that's what they got.
The wheel agrees.
Also, as a Steelers fan,
the wheel
we've
agrees.
seen how bad Artie Burns is. And there was a team that 2 years ago was not bad on defense in the Bears. 2 years later, they're signing Artie Burns, who's just a horrible player. They signed an edge rusher for $70 million the day that they let another edge rusher go for not wanting to pay that guy less. They re-signed a linebacker for 3 years. Signed an O-lineman. They signed Jimmy Graham, which I don't know why. And then they signed Ted Ginn. It's like, are you trying to sign the oldest playmakers in the league? And then Nick Foles, that is what it is. We'll find out in time because it all comes back to how bad Mitch Trubisky is going to be long term.
Yeah.
Not to mention, after they go out and sign Jimmy Graham, they draft a tight end in the second round with their first pick in the draft. Then they go cornerback, OLB, cornerback, wide receiver, offensive tackle, offensive guard. So I guess ESPN says that they had holes at D end and safety. Did not address those in either the draft or really in free agency. They re-signed, I think, their backup safety for 1 year.
Okay.
That's not really addressing issues.
Not really. All right. So they get an F for good reason. How about the Bengals?
All right. So I'm going to say B here, and not because the team name starts with a B. That's right on the line. Right on the line if you're watching with us. If you're listening, right on the line. It was a C. C for Cincinnati. Or
Yeah.
C for, oh my God, I can't see this crappy team anymore. All right. So I kind of get this, but it's a confusing narrative to write. So, yeah, they got Joe Burrow. But what they did in free agency was kind of really stupid.
Okay.
All right. So let me bring this up and We had a nice browser open about if we have to buy roach traps. So that because right after our call last night, Sean, after our production meeting, I saw a little buggy on the floor and I beat the shit out of it. My parents would be proud of me because I have a phobia. So they signed Mackenzie Alexander for a 1-year, $4 million deal. Now, he used to play for the Vikings, and we'll start to see a theme here. Because they also signed the other cornerback who was a free agent from the Vikings, Trey Waynes. So they signed one cornerback for 1 year, $4 million. How much do you think that they signed the other one for?
Same.
No, not even close. 3 years, $42 million.
What?
Could you? And then on top of that, they gave 4 years and $53 million to a defensive tackle.
Okay.
They franchise tagged AJ Green, who did not play at all last year.
Okay.
Which is fine, but this basically means AJ Green this is his last year in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So after that, they go out and get a really good slot receiver in T. Higgins out of Clemson. The problem is he's not going to replace AJ Green.
Yeah.
Not long term. Then they go linebacker, D and OT linebacker. By the way, they got our Marcus Bailey out of Purdue guy that we thought was going to the Eagles.
Oh, okay.
So don't know why Marcus Bailey made our mock draft, ended up going in the 7th round because we only had a list of top 100 prospects, and he went somewhere in the 200s. But whatever, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting time. But the ESPN draft class charts say that they addressed all their needs. I don't agree with that, but then again, I don't really agree with a lot that ESPN stands for.
All right, so
oh boy, the Browns.
On
Holy
to the
crap.
Browns, yeah. So
Did they make some moves? Holy shit! I need to make my browser window bigger.
So these guys get B for Browns.
B for Browns.
Anything to say on this?
Oh yeah. All right. So we saw what the guy looked like that they drafted in the first round.
Yes.
I told you to look him up, and you said, "Wait, what?" Which is your go-to response for something really bad. All right. They did get that Peoples-Jones guy that we had in our mock draft. They got him in the 6th round.
Oh, damn.
All right. And then, let's see here. They signed a defensive tackle for 1 year, $3.5 million, fully guaranteed. You don't really see that on a defensive tackle 1 year contract.
Yeah.
Then they signed a D end, 2 years, $6 million.
Okay.
They signed an offensive tackle, 3 years, $42 million. Then a linebacker on a 1 year deal. Austin Hooper, tight end from the Falcons, goes there 4 years, $42 million. So keep in mind, they're paying a tight end the same amount of money that they're paying an offensive tackle. They tendered Kareem Hunt to keep him there. I don't know why. They acquired a fullback in a trade for a 7th round pick.
Okay.
Signed a cornerback for 1 year, $3.5 million. Signed a safety from the Raiders on a 1 year deal. They signed Case Keenum for $18 million over 3 years with $10 million guaranteed to back up Baker Mayfield. And then they signed a safety for $2.25 million. Then they also went safety, D tackle, linebacker, tight end. So all the positions that they signed in the offseason, they then drafted those same positions in the draft.
Okay. Aside from quarterback, right?
Well, yeah. You don't really need 3 of those.
Yeah.
But ESPN does say that they still need an offensive guard and a cornerback, despite the fact that they did sign a pretty decent one. Although they do have this decent Kevin Johnson cornerback, 1 year, $3.5 million, has a max value of $6 million. I don't know that you give an extra 40% on incentives, but
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
I'd like to work for that organization.
All right, on to the Cowboys.
Oh God, Dallas, what did you guys do? Dallas did everything.
All right, but they get a C.
Okay, it's gonna take a minute to get through just the free agency stuff.
Okay, but let's get through why we think they got a C with how their free agency and drafting went.
Because they did way too much.
Okay.
They did way too much. Jerry, if this was the NBA, Jerry Jones is the owner that says, screw it, we're doing the luxury tax. I don't care. Because not only did they have 7 draft picks,
Okay.
they did everything in free agency. And I mean fucking everything.
Okay.
So not only did they lose a cornerback to the Dolphins, they re-signed one for 3 years, $15.5 million deal, $15.5 million.
Okay.
Then they signed Clinton Dix from the Packers 1 year, $4 million.
Mm-hmm.
They give Amari Cooper a 5-year, $100 million extension. They signed Andy Dalton 1 year, $7 million. They signed Cameron Irving, an offensive lineman, for 1 year.
Okay.
They re-signed Kai Forbath as a kicker, which we'll get to why that one's stupid in a minute. They re-signed Blake Jarwin, a tight end, for 3 years, up to $24.25 million. They re-signed the ever-fragile Sean Lee, the linebacker, who always gets hurt.
Yeah.
Re-sign offensive lineman Joe Looney. They bring in Gerald McCoy, who was, I think, with the Panthers last year on a 3-year, $18 million deal.
Okay.
Then they bring in Dontari Poe. Terms not yet disclosed. They franchise tag Dak Prescott. They agree to Alden Smith, who had been out of the league for a couple of years and always is getting in. Excuse me. Sometimes I have to breathe. He was always getting in trouble off the field, and that's why no one wanted him.
Mm-hmm.
Then they re-signed Darian Thompson, a safety. They agreed to Daryl Worley. I think he played with the Ravens last year, $1 million deal. And here's the kicker, and I don't mean that as a pun. They signed Greg Zuerlein, one of the better kickers in the league, 3 years, $7.5 million. So they now have 2 kickers on the roster from free agency alone. Zuerlein is a good kicker, but he also had some injury issues the past couple of years.
But what do you do with 2 kickers?
Cut one, and I can tell you who it's going to be.
Oh, boy.
It's going to be Forbath.
Yeah.
And then in the draft, they didn't address their need for safety. They did get a cornerback twice. Oh, shoot. Ben DiNucci?
Okay. I don't know who that is.
Well, I only know the name. He was drafted in the 7th round. I know the name because he was a backup at Pitt who played in a bowl game, and he cannot throw. He's a good running quarterback. Can't throw.
Okay.
Anyway, he transferred to James Madison and apparently did good enough to get drafted.
Okay. Good for him.
Okay. All right, Chief.
On to the Broncos.
You like
because that one took 4 minutes.
I told you. They did everything.
All right. On to the Broncos, though. They get a D.
All right. I don't hate what they did, but
the wheel does.
My thing is they didn't do enough with their ample amount of draft picks. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I count out loud. 10 draft picks, and apparently did not address the OT or defensive end positions.
Okay.
They did acquire AJ Boye. He's a good corner for a 4th-round pick. They got Jarrell Casey, pretty solid pickup on the D-line. Signed offensive guard for 4 years, $44 million. I don't know why these offensive linemen are getting such huge deals now. They gave a Punters 3 years, $7 million. which
That's
it's
a lot.
Denver. You really don't need to.
Yeah.
Everybody can kick it farther. They signed Nick Vanette, a solid backup tight end for 2 years. Melvin Gordon, 2 years, $16 million. But the way that the Broncos use running backs, it's all going to be by committee anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I do like that they picked up not 2 but 3 wide receivers. The first 2 in the draft, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, are going to be solid.
Okay.
I think that they did okay, but they didn't address enough of what they actually needed in terms of starters here. They addressed
Fair
a
enough.
lot of backups.
Fair enough. All right.
All right.
On to the Lions.
To the Lions Den. Do, 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 do.
The Lions are our next team to get an A.
They had a decent draft. They still need a backup quarterback.
What about free agency?
Oh, there it is. They brought in Chase Daniel.
Huh?
Not the backup quarterback that they needed. They signed Geronimo Allison for a 1-year, less than $1 million deal, which I don't know how you get a guy that cheap when Aaron Rodgers was slinging him the ball for years.
Uh-huh.
Jamie Collins leaves the Patriots again, goes to Matt Patricia and New England West, 3 years, $30 million deal. Then they sign a couple safeties, a linebacker, a cornerback, or 2 cornerbacks, I should say. They got rid of Darius Slay, got Desmond Trufant to replace him basically within the span of 24 hours.
Okay.
They signed an offensive tackle for 5 years, $50 million. So they did a lot in free agency.
Fair enough. Notable things in the draft?
They got a pretty good cornerback in Jeff Okudah, or whatever it's called. DeAndre Swift. It's a nice add at running back, but the Detroit Lions, when I think of them and running backs, it's like the most off-injured scenario in football.
Mm-hmm.
The only one that seems to have lasted was Barry Sanders, and he just left the game.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll go through him too.
Okay. On to the Packers.
They didn't do much. They signed Devin Funchess, a linebacker, a tight end, because not a year goes by where they don't. They got an A, apparently.
Yep, they get an A.
Somehow replacing Aaron Rodgers long-term with Jordan Love gets you an A, despite the fact that they didn't get Aaron Rodgers a wide receiver at all, which the world still is buzzing about. They drafted a running back in the second round, which doesn't really help Aaron Rodgers, throw the ball, especially when that running back is from Boston College. Can't really think of, I don't know. I don't know. I don't really like their draft that much. I really don't.
The wheel thinks that drafting a quarterback was the absolute most perfect thing to do, so it gives him an A.
Almost every school that all their draft picks went to were basically in the Midwest. Minnesota, Michigan, Indiana, or at least half their draft was, and then Utah State, Boston. They mix it up, but like half of their scouting apparently was just local.
Okay. On to the Texans.
Texans didn't start drafting till the second round this year.
Which is why they get a D in their total offseason grade.
Yeah, and this is clearly, karma for being the stupid team that anoints a former college head coach as their GM and head coach, keeps him there way too long, and then allows him to ship off DeAndre Hopkins just because he has a beef with him.
Yep.
And so you don't have a first-round pick. You give Randall Cobb, who was like on a nothing deal with the Cowboys, 3 years, $27 million, and $18 million guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
You bring in Brandon Cooks, who had a down year last year.
Mm-hmm.
They re-signed a tight end or 2. They acquired David Johnson, who really hasn't done much didn't do much for Arizona the past 2 years anyway.
Mm-hmm.
give a cornerback who didn't last in Denver 3 years, $36 million, because he did okay last year. And then on top of that, they only had 5 draft picks, and they needed a running back after David Johnson because he gets hurt. Didn't address it. They needed a safety. They re-signed Eric Murray, who I'm guessing is a backup, so they did not address that either.
Okay. On to the Colts. The Colts get an F.
I can see it.
Why?
Phillip Rivers, man. It's a sound pickup in theory, but he's on a 1-year deal, and if it goes wrong, if he gets hurt because he's getting older and he plays the game really, really energetically and really hard, as you get older, has the potential of going south more and more.
Yep.
And you gave him $25 million fully guaranteed. We understand that you had to pay him, but also the news coming out yesterday, he already has a job as a high school coach lined up for after football. So you gave $25 million fully guaranteed to a guy who clearly has no attachment to the team. He's already looked at his next move before he started this one. Let's see. They acquired DeForest Buckner. That was a decent one. Gave up a first-round pick to do it, though. They got a wide receiver. They got Jacob Eason, a okay backup quarterback, potential successor. But the thing is I don't know what you're going to do with Brissett now. Because you gave Brissett an extension last year of, I want to say $20-some million over 3 years. And then now you're giving Eason probably a 5-year deal for a mid-round pick, so that's not going to eat up a lot of cap. But then Phillip Rivers, so you're allocating a lot of your salary cap to the depth chart of quarterback, right? Jonathan Taylor's a decent running back. I don't know that they needed it because, again, this is a team that goes by committee. The other picks are all right, but I think they tried to go too big of splash moves in the wrong places.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense.
I think they weren't far off from a playoff spot last year when everything went wrong. So they only needed to make some of the moves for things to go right.
Yeah, okay.
And I think they went a little too far. You can toe the line and then you can absolutely capture the flag and go over it. I think they went over it. It's not a good analogy, but I'm sticking with it.
Okay. On to Jacksonville.
All right. So Jacksonville, I don't know what they were doing in free agency just by signing Tyler Eifert, who's got glass body parts for the past 4 years.
Okay. Well, they get a C.
Good. Okay. Must be because Mike Lennon got signed, I think today, actually. Today or yesterday, he's going to back up Gardner Minshew. Let's see. Sean Melvin stays for a year. They franchise tag Yannick Ngakoue, and now they're trying to trade him. They gave a linebacker who was with Cleveland last year 5 years, $54 million, with $22.5 million guaranteed. Not a little bit of a deep dive.
Yeah.
Other than that, they just give 1-year deals to everybody.
So it's not long term in the slightest.
Right. They gave Eifert $2 million. They gave Schobert, the linebacker, $54 million in 5 years. Everybody else is on a 1-year deal in the free agency class.
Okay. On to Kansas City.
Although the ESPN says that they addressed everything that they needed in the draft, which
Kansas City also gets a C.
By the way, one last thing about Jacksonville. When your defense is as good as they're building theirs to be up again, you're only as good as your offense will allow you to be too. And they still haven't learned that you have to address both sides of the ball.
Okay.
All right. So Kansas City gets a C. Let's see. re-signed a couple guys for a year. Signed Taco Charlton, I guess, and the next in line to take a flyer on him. They just basically re-signed guys, which is good for them. Defending champs don't really lose anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sure they did, but in terms of potentially keeping as much of the crew as they could, they did a decent job. They went running back in the first round, which I don't really get. Damian Williams was pretty damn good in that playoff push, and he's not been in the league long. He's on a rookie deal. It's perfect time to have locked him up probably for the cheap. Then they draft a linebacker, OT, safety. They didn't do bad, but they're not giving Mahomes enough protection, I feel like.
Okay.
Mahomes is only going to be as mobile as he is for 3-4 more years.
Fair enough. All right. So that is the first half of the teams. On to the second half. Starting with the Los Angeles Chargers.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I think I might have gone with the Raiders as if they were still in Oakland.
Yes.
Oops. I looked up the alphabetical list on some site, and I was going through a checklist, and that list must have been outdated.
All right.
So the Chargers.
We'll fix the Oakland Raiders to Las Vegas when we get there.
Let's go Oakland next. It's right there on the graphic next to it. Anyway.
The Chargers
so
get
the Chargers
a
get a B. All right, so they gave an O.
Go ahead.
Go for it. No, go for it.
No, go ahead.
They gave an offensive tackle 3 years, $30 million. By far, maybe the cheapest offensive tackle deal I've seen so far in the free agency for a multi-year. They placed the franchise tag on Hunter Henry. Why? He's never healthy. They signed Chris Harris, decent cornerback who's probably getting up there in age for a cornerback though. They re-signed Austin Eckler for a 4-year, $24.5 million contract.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay, but he's going to end up being a split back. He can't handle the workload long term, although I don't know who they'll save on the roster. They get Justin Herbert, pretty good guy, close to home in Oregon, I guess, geographically. And then they didn't do bad in the rest of the draft. They needed younger corners. They didn't get them.
Okay.
That's their big flaw there.
So that's what kept them from getting an A. On to the Rams.
Rams.
The Rams get a D.
And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
In all the offseason moves, the new logo, we still don't know if they're getting new uniform. How am I supposed to create graphics with outdated materials if I don't know what the new stuff is? So I don't like that. But let's see. They re-signed a defensive tackle on a 3-year contract after a deal fell through with Baltimore.
Okay.
Signed a defensive tackle for 2 years, $17 million. And they re-signed offensive lineman for a 3 year, $30 million contract. Drafted a running back in the second round, wide receiver in the second round as well. And they went linebacker, safety, tight end, place kicker in the 7th round. Okay, so this is typical Chargers stuff, but not Rams stuff. They went kind of heavy on the offense and special teams, which is a very Chargers move to not have a defense.
All right.
New stadium, and I guess role reversal too.
Yeah. All right, how about the Dolphins next?
Sure thing, buddy. So the Dolphins did a bunch.
They did so much, they got an F.
So maybe you don't give a cornerback $82 million.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's ever been done before.
Oh, fun.
And then they got Tua, which will be, I think, a good move. And then they got, I mean, we discussed this last episode. They could have gotten guys at 30 with their first round pick that they took at 18.
Yeah.
So we agree that they kind of messed that one up. All in all, they had a lot of draft picks, and it's kind of hard to tell, how they're going to play out. But then they signed edge rusher for 3-year, $30 million. Another one for 2-year, $15 million. And these are big names: Emmanuel Ogbah, Shaq Lawson, Kyle Van Noy for 4 years, $51 million. So, Jordan Howard, running back, 2 years, $10 million. Eric Flowers, offensive tackle. Sean, you know how bad Eric Flowers was with the Giants, right?
Yes.
Why did he get 3 years, $30 million, and $20 million guaranteed?
This is why they get an F, dude.
Yeah, that's the
Done.
Dolphins throwing around Marino money.
Done.
At a horrible
Eric
point.
Flowers,
Yep.
$30 million.
Nope, can't do it. But yeah, after all that, they still need a running back.
Yep. All right. On to the Vikings.
Yes, sir, the Vikes. Wow, the Vikings had a lot of picks.
They had an A.
Holy.
Did they really have more picks than the Dolphins?
Yes, they had 15 picks.
What?
I had to scroll down to get them all.
Okay.
They had 4 seventh-round picks.
So let's go through notable picks then, because I don't think we want to sit here.
Yeah, so they replaced Stephon Diggs with Justin Jefferson. Decent. Okay. I think Justin Jefferson is going to be he's not your splash playmaker, but he's your reliable playmaker.
Okay.
Kind of like Hines Ward was for us back in the day.
Yeah.
But without the ability to knock out a linebacker's jaw.
Uh-huh.
Then they went quarterback in the second round after losing a couple of them, so that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
And then they went cornerback again in the third round. They went offensive tackle in the second round as well. I'm sorry, they went cornerback in the first round, not the second round. Then they went defense. Let's see, they went defense from the third round all the way to the end of the fifth round. So they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight defensive picks. Then they went 2 offensive picks at wide receiver and offensive tackle. Went 2 more defensive picks. Nate Stanley wasn't a bad quarterback at Iowa. He'll do okay as a second or third stringer. They re-signed Amir Abdullah. Re-signed Dan Bailey, who was their kicker. They gave a fullback 4 years, $12 million. That's actually a pretty good deal. 4 years and less than, $15 million.
Yeah.
Considering what everybody else was going for. I mean, the Steelers got Derek Watt for 2 years, $10 million. So that's a hometown discount.
All right.
Then they signed a defensive tackle for 3 years. And that's pretty much the gist of it. So not bad. They did
a lot.
They addressed a lot.
And they addressed a lot. Okay. So
and ESPN says that they addressed their needs.
Okay. On to the Patriots.
All right.
The Pats get an F.
Now, I hate to do this because I hate the Patriots. But I think that Stidham isn't a horrible quarterback. And I'm sure that the Patriots will win at least 10 games this year.
Okay.
Because the wheel in the world will say the Patriots are stupid for not drafting a quarterback. I think they know exactly what they have. And I think I know that because one of their bigger acquisitions in the offseason, they signed Brian Hoyer back again.
Okay.
So Tom Brady's backup from years past. They signed him back to be the backup again.
Okay.
So they're drafting system guys in case things fail. So they know that they're going with Stidham. In typical Patriots fashion, they lose a fullback, they sign a fullback. They re-signed a special teamer. Let's see, they're all just backup depth chart deals. Second round, they go with a safety from a no-name school with the 5th pick in the second round.
Okay.
And then they go, they went with the racist kicker in the 5th round. That
Oh,
immediately caused controversy, and the kicker's like, okay, I got to get some tattoos covered up. Let's see. They drafted 2 tight ends, and they didn't draft any skill positions here.
oh,
They went, tackles on each end, centers. There's nothing fancy about this draft. But then again, Belichick never, needed anything fancy.
right.
So we'll see.
All right, but the wheel in the world say F. On to the Saints.
The Saints, who had 4 draft picks.
Well, apparently they get an A for 4 amazing draft picks.
Yeah, so they got a center in the first round and Cesar Ruiz.
Mm-hmm.
Then a linebacker, tight end, and look, they drafted a quarterback with their 4th and final pick in the 7th round.
Okay.
But they re-signed Breeze for
2 years?
2 years, $50 million.
Yep.
They keep Taysom Hill, but then they signed Jameis Winston for a steal of money.
Uh-huh.
$1 million for a guy who threw 30. I don't care how many interceptions he threw. He threw 5,000 yards and 30
Yeah.
plus touchdowns, and he settled for $1 million. They re-signed a cornerback for a year. They bring in a safety for a year. They bring in Emmanuel Sanders because that's what the Saints do. Is they always bring in a wide receiver
Mm-hmm.
of notable status. They re-signed an offensive tackle for 5 years, and they brought in another one. Or I'm sorry, they re-signed an offensive tackle, and they brought in a defensive tackle, 3 years, $27 million.
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm Jenkins, they gave a 4-year extension. Don't know why, but it is what it is. All right, moving on.
On to the Giants.
By the way, ESPN says that the Saints addressed none of their needs.
Oh.
Wide receiver, offensive guard, cornerback, inside linebacker, defensive tackle.
All right, the Giants get a B. Why?
Okay.
Please enlighten me, because I'm used to the Giants just failing.
Okay, so Dion Lewis, I saw him in college. You're going to like Dion Lewis.
Okay.
Dion Lewis can run the ball. He's a smaller running back, but he's really good at pass catching. Let's see, Nate Ebner is a pretty solid backup safety. He'll be really good on special teams.
Mm-hmm.
James Bradbury's okay. I don't know why he gave him $45 million. Blake Martinez is decent. He'll make things slightly better for the linebackers. It won't solve anything because he was with Green Bay before.
Okay.
They re-signed David Mayo. That's not bad. Colt McCoy will be a decent backup. He's not the worst one you could have. Guys brought in some tight ends. That's
Again.
not bad. Yeah, but Eric Tomlinson, if you watch enough Jets games, you've seen him because he was with them the past few years. Andrew Thomas wasn't a horrible pick, but it still wasn't the best pick. Let's see here. They did a lot to actually try to plug up some of the offensive and defensive line woes here. They just didn't draft anyone at wide receiver.
Yeah.
But I think that Darius Slayton is a pretty good wide receiver too.
Okay.
I think that a lot of people overlook him.
All right.
He was a good fantasy ad last year.
Fair enough. On to the other New York team.
All right. Spin the wheel.
Wheel is spinning. The Jets get a C.
Okay. So the Jets, they made interesting moves.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they brought in Frank Gore.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really help them because it's more of a Frank Gore staying in the NFL thing than it is helping the Jets.
Yeah.
Because Frank Gore will be good, but the Jets right now are not playoff contenders who need a last, push forward. They re-sign and bring in some cornerbacks. They agree to a deal with an offensive tackle. They sign a center for 3 years, $27 million. Their deals aren't big, but they're not bad either.
But they're not necessarily that good. Like,
correct.
Gore is not a good pickup for this team.
They're middle of the road.
Yeah.
Kind of moves.
Okay.
Now, the draft wasn't bad. Becton is going to help with plugging up the offensive line. They got Denzel Mims out of Baylor at wide receiver. The thing is losing Robbie Anderson isn't going to help.
All right.
They didn't do horrible, but they didn't do great either.
All right. On to the Las Vegas Raiders. They get an A. Why is that?
Because they're really high on Henry Ruggs, I guess.
Okay.
See, they signed us a capable starting safety in Jeff Heath. They got Nelson Aguilar, which isn't really a great move. 1-year deals, pretty much, except they got a linebacker. 3 years, $21 million, and Nick Kwiatkowski. They brought in Corey Littleton from the Rams, 3 years, $36 million.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus Mariota got paid pretty handsomely for a backup role in Raiderland.
Okay.
And they got Carl Nassib, 3 years, $25 million. And they brought in Jason Witten, and like we said, we've already poked that joke before of the coach who used to do Monday Night Football and the player who used to do Monday Night Football.
Right. But
the draft isn't bad.
That gives them an A, apparently. So
the draft isn't bad.
Yeah.
But ESPN's right. They do need an actual quarterback because
True.
Carr is not it.
True. All right. How about them Eagles? The Eagles get a B.
I can agree with that.
Javon
Hargrave is a really good signing. He did really well here. 3 years, $39 million for a nose tackle, but he really gets after it.
Okay.
Then they got Rodney McLeod, a decent safety, 2 years, $12 million. They kept a couple guys around.
Mm-hmm.
They got Darius Slay from the Lions. He's a top 10 cornerback in the league. And then they did pretty well in the draft. They just needed more on the secondary.
Okay. So that's...
Plus, they drafted a Prince Tega Wanaho from Auburn.
Oh, he was in our thing, wasn't he?
6th round.
Oh, of course.
I think we were looking at the wrong list.
We were looking... Yes.
I think we were looking at the last 100 ranked.
All right, on to the Steelers.
D.
Wow. Really close to that F.
Well, I mean, the thing is at some point we have to deal with this reality that Ben is made. He isn't like this shielded armor anymore. The dude is getting banged up. Just basically he didn't have to have Tommy John surgery, but he was like a hair away from it. And we know what that does to ruin baseball pitchers' careers.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a quarterback who has to sling it, 45 yards longer.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't do anything to draft a quarterback there. We franchise tagged Bud Dupree, so unfortunately this is probably the last year we have him. We got Eric Ebron, which I think is a decent move. 2 years, $12 million. And we got a second Watt brother in Derek for 3 years, $9.75 million. People speak highly of this Chris Wormley dude we got from the Ravens, but he was not a high pick. And we got a hometown guy, Steven Wisniewski, who's from here. He was on the Chiefs, won a Super Bowl last year. We got him for 2 years.
Okay.
But our draft just was
Bad.
not great. I don't understand why we went wide receiver with our first pick.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
And then why we went running back. We already have like 5 of them on the roster.
All right.
5 of them that were drafted within like the last 4 years.
Great. Good job, guys.
Connor, Snell, Samuels.
Good job, guys.
Yep.
All right, on to the 49ers. The 49ers get an A.
Sounds
Why
about
is
right.
that?
I mean, because they were a team who was in the Super Bowl and they had 2 first-round picks.
Uh-huh.
And they didn't screw them up. They got a defensive tackle and a wide receiver after they lost Emmanuel Sanders.
Yep.
They did pretty damn good. And then they brought in Travis Benjamin on the cheap. He's a speedy wideout.
Mm-hmm.
They re-signed a really good defensive lineman for 5 years. They re-signed a decent safety for 3 years. They didn't have a lot of draft picks, but they certainly did a lot with it, even though ESPN says that they did not address a lot of holes. But they didn't have many to begin with.
Mm-hmm. All right. Good grade for them. On to the Seahawks.
Right.
The Seahawks get an F.
But they didn't really do much.
That's
At least
probably why.
In terms of bolstering themselves. Bringing in Greg Olsen doesn't help.
Yep.
Mike Iupati is decent, but he's pretty much like last legs of his career.
No, I was going to say he's pretty much done.
Philip Dorsett is okay, but nothing special. So these are good, but they don't really help.
Yep. On to the Bucks.
I need to find a mute button there. All right.
The Bucks
Fucking-
get a D. How?
Focus too much on the now. After the next 2 years, it's not going to be great.
Okay.
So you get the Tom Brady thing,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll find out for sure if it was Brady makes Belichick or Belichick makes Brady or a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've never seen Tom Brady not do well. But
Yep.
if there's ever a time to see it, it could be now.
Yep.
They get Gronk out of retirement, which I really don't know about that. He's not really a tight end guy anymore.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
I think they're 2 stacked on offense, which is weird to say, but they have decent running backs, nothing really amazing at running back. Plus, they drafted 2 running backs.
Okay.
But then they also have Gronk and all those other wide receivers that were already there. So
Yep.
I'm not exactly sure about this.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. On to the Titans.
All right.
The Titans get an A.
They brought in a decent edge rusher on a 1-year deal. Franchise tag, Derrick Henry. They're going to have to figure out an extension with that dude. I don't think there's any way you can let him walk.
Mm-hmm.
Although the Steelers have bell walk, so you never know. Brought in cornerback. Tannehill is the big one. They really didn't give anybody else big deals.
Mm-hmm.
And then their draft is okay. They got a really decent backup quarterback in the 7th round, I think, Cole McDonald out of Hawaii.
Oh.
I don't know if you know about Hawaii football. They basically don't use a running back. They only throw the ball.
Okay.
But yeah, they replaced the guy who left at offensive tackle in the 1st round.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. We don't need to get too much more into it.
Yeah. on to the last team,
Thank
the
God. This took way
Washington
longer than I thought.
Redskins. They get a C.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you why. Because they're still the Washington Redskins. So they bring Kyle Allen, which I don't understand why they. We've seen this experiment a number of times with the NFL teams before.
Mm-hmm.
Guys go to where their old head coaches were, and
Yep.
it never works.
Yep.
So Kyle Allen, who wasn't that great to begin with, goes from the Panthers to the Redskins to play for Ron Rivera.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Davis, take him. We didn't want him. Thomas Davis, again, a former Panther going that way. Kendall Fuller is a decent ad, but we'll see. Cody Latimer, he wasn't anything spectacular with the Giants. Signed a few offensive linemen. Nothing amazing here. The big thing is they got Chase Young. After that, nothing really stands out there.
All right.
We'll see.
All right. Now we get to talk about strength of schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just go with the Colts have the easiest schedule this year, with Atlanta having the hardest.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with the first list you looked at, where the
Or apparently
Steelers
the
and Ravens
Steelers
had
and
the
Ravens,
easiest schedule.
which makes no sense to me if someone wants to tell me how two teams in the same division can have the easiest schedules, despite the fact that they play each other twice. Let me know why 1/8 of their season is really hard and the rest of it is just super easy.
Yeah. Other notable things from this list: both New Yorks have the second and third hardest schedules.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Baltimore still has Baltimore, Cleveland still have pretty easy schedule. Pittsburgh has a 500, which is where things should theoretically be, but as you can see, this list is pretty skewed towards about like 510.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, apparently you have to be the defending champions to get a draw as good as the Steelers did, which is right in where the world theoretically should be turning. But nope, the regular season best team in the Ravens get to have the advantages.
Mm-hmm.
Indianapolis, who didn't. The way it works is if you have, I think, over 11 wins, you're supposed to play a harder schedule the next season than
Yeah.
other teams. And if you have less than 11 wins, you kind of. But the thing is, you're kind of locked into playing the other conference division. Every
You're locked into 6 games every year.
no more. There's more
Well, I'm just talking about
if you're an AFC team, each year you rotate playing a division in the NFC.
Right.
You'll play all 4 of those.
Right, but what I'm saying is you at least have 6 games, which is 2 against each of the other teams in your division.
Right.
Right? So if your division just has a bunch of hard teams, that's a 30-year schedule right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. This one's interesting.
I'm actually kind of surprised. Las Vegas has a pretty hard schedule. Cincy has the hardest schedule in your division.
It's just because everything is an uphill battle for them.
Fair enough.
Except for the escalator where all the people leave. That's a downhill thing.
All right. Yeah, anything else you want to bring up from this list?
Not really. I think we thought that this one was going to yield more content than it did.
All right, on to the NHL. So let's figure out the Eastern Conference Finals right now.
Mm-hmm. This is exhilarating. It's exciting. It's extravagant. It's
All right, so
It's
our
like-
first
it's like
matchup
yeah, go ahead.
is the Canadiens and the Bruins.
This is more exciting than that picture of Jeffrey the giraffe after Toys R Us won the top 10.
I'm hoping for the Canadiens because we'll know they'll lose next round anyway.
Was it because it was snowing today that you're rooting for a Canadian team?
It was snowing near you? It was just freezing near us.
It was snowing.
Oh, fun for you.
Yesterday and today. Didn't stick.
All right.
It's May, by the way. This is not pre-recorded.
All right, and the Canadiens in 7.
Oh, Montreal.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah, thank you, Quebec.
huh?
Mm-mm.
So like, I mean, at least the Bruins put up a fight, but thanks for the Canadiens winning.
Oh yeah, leave it to Boston to fight. We're gonna get letters, and they're gonna have like spit in them.
All right, on to the Capitals and Lightning.
By the way, what's great is the Canadians and Bruins are actually a rivalry.
Yeah. Original 6, right?
Sure.
All right.
The extent to which I care is like the last 2 days. Original
Alright.
6. I'm not going back that far.
Anything you want to say about the Lightning and Caps?
Screw 'em.
Yeah.
I hope that a Tampa Bay Lightning strikes that bird logo. And that's what I get. Capitals in 6.
The Capitals win this one in 6, yeah.
Wonderful. Even in a fictitious world, I can't get the Capitals to stop winning after 2018.
Yeah, so our Eastern Conference Finals is Canadiens Capitals. And we will finish the Eastern Conference Finals and the Stanley Cup next episode. So let's just figure out who the Western Conference Finals are.
Will this be the year that Canadian team wins the cup?
I don't know. On to the Stars Predators. I personally hope for the Predators in this one. I don't know. I just like their logo better.
I think it's about time that Jason Spezza retires. So there you go. Stars in 5.
Yeah, I don't get my wish.
Well, and you don't like when I call it a gentleman's sweep, so I won't say it, but you know what it is.
Yep. All right, and then the last match is the Knights and the Avalanche. The Golden Knights and the Avalanche, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Just chose to put one order on this wheel, so off they go.
Avalanche in 4.
Avalanche, an actual sweep.
Yep. Which is exactly what you want, is for the two, series in that conference to be like 4 or 5 games. Just waiting for everything else to finish up on the East Coast.
Yep. All right, so yeah, next episode we'll do the Eastern Conference Finals and we'll have the Stanley Cup.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we have the Canadiens and Capitals and the Stars and Avalanche for next episode.
Yes, we do.
And
It's going to be a miserable ride for me.
all right, on to the next topic we have.
All right, yeah, this is more like the sentimental thing like I did with Gonzaga. It's the Korean Baseball Organization. Now, if you've been paying attention for a couple of weeks to sports because you miss them like we do, and I can't speak for Sean here on if you paid attention to this, but there were rumors that ESPN was negotiating with the Korean Baseball Organization for broadcast rights to give us something in the interim, which sounds good in theory. They got a deal done, and let me tell you why this is like the obligation for me to watch, but it's also like the worst thing to, because time difference in South Korea to here has to be like 12 hours.
Yep.
So like today I'm watching ESPN. They're promoting a Korean Baseball Organization game they're presenting it like it's prime time, and it's like it starts at 12:55 a.m. Eastern time. Like, and then I'm thinking like, oh, that must be because it's like an afternoon game and it's Saturday there.
No.
No. What time would it have been there?
Isn't it night?
Well, anyway, it's got to be not night because work days, because I still go into a hospital to work and I actually have to get dressed and all that stuff, and I wake up at 5:50 in the morning. I wake up and put on ESPN because I'm used to watching SportsCenter while I get ready to start the day.
Yeah.
I wake up just in time for the second inning to start live of a Korean baseball game, and immediately, because in the Asian dominant countries, they do the whole anime thing where they have multiple mascots and multiple cheerleaders, and they're all like dancing on top of a dugout. And keep in mind, I've been awake for like 3 minutes, and I've already had just about enough of that energy. And I don't even drink coffee in the morning. I'm like, I can't do that.
Yep.
Then on top of that, none of these players, the front of their jersey is in English, but the back of the jersey, the names are in Korean, which does not help me at all in acknowledging who's different in any way. And I don't mean that in terms of how they look. I just want to know their names so that if I were to look up stats later on, if I actually built up a genuine interest in this, I could actually backtrack. And I can't. Then, on top of that, there's the stadiums that are empty. The umpires and officials are wearing masks over their face, but not their nose, which is a little interesting in itself.
Yeah.
And the base coaches are also wearing masks, but not covering their nose. But the base coaches aren't wearing gloves. So in theory, the players are wearing batting gloves or stuff. It's okay in theory. But they're still doing all the fist bumps and stuff like that going around the bases. So really, this doesn't work either. Or they're like holding the equipment of people who are like sweating. So that doesn't work either.
But I mean,
the officials and base coaches are the only people wearing masks, by the way.
But
everybody else,
also like the players, right? If I'm the second baseman, I still have my glove hitting the other player.
Exactly. In a game where you still need to tag, the players, none are wearing masks. And especially, when like someone's on first base and the first baseman is like right there.
Lack of social distancing, guy.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the only instance where it matters because the first baseman stays close to the bag there. But
yeah,
it's not like everybody can play the outfield. I'll say it like that.
Yeah.
But, like, how can you have it where everybody but the players is wearing masks? And then you have the stadiums, which they filled in the seats are empty. So what they did is they like got tarps and put photos of like the generic Photoshop templates of people as fans. And I'm like,
that's hilarious.
It's like we all understand like that people can't go to the game. You don't actually have to, invest thousands and thousands of dollars to try to provide an illusion to the team.
But hey, if they don't invest those thousands and thousands of dollars, where do we get content?
And the fact that ESPN feels like showing the game, their broadcasters are on a third of the screen from their houses, and while baseball, which already is one of the smaller ball, equipment used in sports, is now on an even smaller aspect ratio on your screen. I don't know. It's a lot to take in at 6 a.m. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
Give it to me at like, when I get home from work and I can like drink a beer to it. I'm better with that.
Okay.
But then again, it's still in Korea, and then they'd be saying the same thing about us because it'd be like 3 a.m. there.
Fair
If
enough.
not, so I don't know. It's a tough one, but like I said,
Hey,
it's
pump
kind
that.
of like if you're going through sports withdrawal.
Hey,
And I don't even think that I'm going through it that badly. I
it's
think
better than
yeah.
in my place. I get to see when I walk downstairs ESPN The Ocho mini golf or something. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, that's like a nuisance that eventually goes away. Whereas baseball, it's not like mini golf. Mini golf probably doesn't take 3 hours to complete.
Fair enough. But like,
yeah,
you know,
the Ocho needs to not start before 10 a.m.
I
You
like go
need
downstairs
energy for the Ocho.
and all I see is like, oh, welcome to ESPN The Ocho, and I'm just like, no.
I thought that was only a one-time thing. They're still doing that?
I heard it.
Oh, God.
All right.
Well, I mean, that's my gripe with Korean baseball. But I'll take it while it's here.
All right. Yeah. Thanks
All right.
for tuning in. You got any closing remarks to say?
All I'm going to say is if the NBA is the next to open up and I actually have to pay attention to the NBA over anything else, I'm going to be upset.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Well, they're reopening training facilities and states lifting the restrictions.
Oh, but like New York is still closed. New Jersey is still like closed.
Yeah, like the Knicks are going to make the playoff.
Okay. All right. Yep. Thanks for tuning in, and catch you next time.
Yep. See you.